Hi, I'm Angie from Angie's Son. So today we're going to talk about understanding Burgundy. So Burgundy, I think, is one of the most amazing wine region in the world because it's just so complicated to learn. But once you understand it or once you start falling in love with it, it's so hard not to continue to go into it. Since I am actually doing a virtual Burgundy tasting this Friday, I think it's very important for me to film a video talking a little bit about understanding Burgundy before we go into it. So I'm standing in front of the map of the world. Just wanted to kind of give from like a Google zoom in view of Burgundy. Obviously, we know this is the world. We have Europe here. Here is France. And when you go into France, I have no decorations besides a bunch of maps in our house. So here is the map of France. So in France, most people, when they think about France, they think of Paris, which is right here. But then if you go a little bit south of Paris, southeast of Paris, Chablis up there, and we go from Dijon down to here. That's it. That tiny little portion, that's your entire Burgundy. And all of Burgundy, there's the most well-known region is the Côte d'Or. So or means gold. Côte d'Or, Côte means hill, so it's a golden rolling hill. Relative to this entire Burgundy map, it's an even smaller region that covers from here to here. That's very tiny. But to really understand Burgundy, you just can't listen to story. You have to look at a map because Burgundy is so highly divided by the vineyard and the village. So everything has to do with where the wine come from or the grapes come from. So this is my favorite map. It's actually a combo of two. So the little region we just showed you called the Côte d'Or also combined to a Côte de Nuit, which is the northern part, and it's focused mostly on red wine, hence we have the red frame. And then on the southern part, we have the Côte de Beaune. So this is mostly white wine. And because it is kind of a low and skinny region, the map is in the real world is supposed to be like this, north-south. So you can see the north is pointing this way. So the map is actually supposed to go this way. It's a very low and skinny region. I know it might sound a little obsessive to have map that have so much detail and map this big, but that is what you need to really understand Burgundy. Don't worry, if you want to learn more about it, you don't have to have a crazy map like this. I highly recommend getting a book like this one, The World Atlas of Wine. So they actually will break down the entire Burgundy region like we have on the map, but just in smaller bite-sized pieces. But since we have the bigger map here, we'll do that. Burgundy. The easiest thing to understand about Burgundy is the grape. There's only two main grapes. You either have Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. There are other grapes that's planted and harvested in Burgundy. We're just not going to go into that. We're just going on the very basics. So just remember, whenever you think of Burgundy, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then it is really highly focused on where it's coming from. And the price can range widely, just depends on where the grape is sourced. Whenever you are at a supermarket, the most common bottle you will see on a supermarket is what they call a Bourgogne. Bourgogne means the grape can come from anywhere from the entire Burgundy region where we showed you on that map earlier. But then after that, the next thing we look at is what we consider a village level Burgundy. So in the Côte de Nuit, from north to south, you have all this different village, and in this map is being separated by this kind of big dark gray map. So here is Marsanne, and then we have Fixin here. But then it really gets exciting. This is where the most expensive wine in the world come from, and what the collector really look after is kind of starting from this village forward. Gevrey Chambertin, Moray Saint-Denis, so Gevrey Chambertin, Moray Saint-Denis, Chambon-Musigny, the Flag Echezot, the most expensive one, the Vosne Romani and Flag Echezot is kind of like together, it's a little complicated, and then Nuit Saint-George. So here you can see all this individual village have their own name. The cheapest and the easiest to find wine will be a wine called Bourgogne, as I said earlier. That means it can be grape from anywhere of Burgundy. After that, you'll get a little fancy. You'll start to see the label naming the individual village. So you could go to a nicer wine shop and you will find a bottle of Burgundy that will have the name of the village listed there. Gerbera Chambertin, Chambre Musigny, Moët Saint-Denis, or whatever have you. And I think at this point, it already starts to get a little complicated because you have to understand not only who is the winemaker that's making that certain wine, because every winemaker have a different style, especially in Burgundy. You have people who use New York, people that doesn't use any New York. You have people who like to include stem whenever they're fermenting the grapes, so it adds more of that rusty and tannicky taste. Or you have the people who take out all the stem because they want to get a fruitier flavor. So you already have that separation just on the producer alone. But then each village means very different things too. For example, if you find a producer and they have a bottle of Marsanne, maybe it'll cost you $20, $30, but the same producer, if the wine is coming from Gerbera Chambertin, it could easily be a $50, $60 bottle of wine just because Gerbera Chambertin as a village has such a higher reputation and have historically been known to make more masculine wine. And on top of that, it takes years and years and lots of tasting and lots of exploring to learn the minute differences between each of the village. Imagine it's kind of like, okay, so you have a bottle of wine from California, which doesn't really give you a lot of terroir or stylistic flavor. Besides that, it's a bottle of wine from California. It kind of has an idea, but not really. Then you go, oh, this is a bottle of wine from Napa. Now you can go, okay, we can compare the difference between Napa to Sonoma to Monterey to Santa Cruz. But that already takes a more refined palate and more experience to be able to understand the difference. But then on top of that, in Burgundy, they further divide that into individual vineyard, and it's super confusing, and they put it on the label, but it's not always easy unless you know what you're looking for. So for example, on this map, you will see all the really light pink color. Those are individual vineyard, but then they don't have any ranking. So sometimes producer will, if it's wine just from one single vineyard, they might just put the name of the vineyard on the label, but it doesn't really have any ranking, like I said earlier. Then after that, you will have this kind of a orange salmon color, the slightly darker pinkish orangish color. Those are all what we call the Premier Cru. And Premier Cru is one step up. And after that, you see the dark red here. Those are the Grand Cru. Since the 13th century, the monks have been planting grapes here in Burgundy, and they've done really detailed work documenting where are the best plots. So after hundreds of years, these are what they consider the best places to plant Pinot Noir, and they were awarded the Grand Cru status. Because it's so limited as far as in space, the supply and demand is very disproportional, hence why Burgundy is so hard to find and so very expensive. Or because of the Napoleon law saying that whenever you pass away, you have to split up your land equally between all your kids, it further divide the property of Burgundy. So in each individual Grand Cru, there could be multiple owner that has just a couple of rows of vine inside of that Grand Cru, which makes things even more complicated. For example, one of our biggest Grand Cru in Côte de Nuit, which is Côte de Vougeot, that one has more than 60 owner in this plot of land. So we're talking about each owner maybe have 2 rows of vine to work with. It's absolutely bananas trying to learn Burgundy. And then, as I said earlier, when you have a bottle of wine from Bourgogne, which is anywhere from Burgundy, it maybe cost you $20. If you're going to a village level, like we said here, we have the village of Marsanne, that's less known because there's no Premier or Grand Cru vineyard coming up on here. You probably can still get a bottle for $20 to $30 a bottle. Once you get into the nicer village, if you're getting a village level bottle from Gerbera Chambertin, it might cost you $50 to $60, depending on the producer, sometimes even higher. And then, of course, if you are looking into getting a Premier Cru single vineyard wine from that single village, then you're looking at upward of $100. And once you get into the Grand Cru vineyard, it can go anywhere from a couple $100 to tens of thousands of dollars if you're looking at like the most expensive DRC. So it is something really confusing and really hard to learn. And that's why whenever I have a chance, I like to be able to compare apples to apple or have a theme when you're first learning about Burgundy. So if you are really just starting, get Bourgogne made by different producer and see how you like them. But if you have a slightly more funding And if you have a couple more friends who you guys can learn together, I recommend breaking it down from individual villages first. As a beginner Burgundy taster, I would recommend if you can find a producer that have wine from multiple different villages and just compare them on the village level. Louis Jourdain, for example, is one of the biggest negociants. They have wine from pretty much every region of Burgundy and pretty easy to find because they're widely distributed. So it will be awesome to be able to taste, ideally, one producer, so Louis Jourdain, and you find a bottle from Geoffroy Chambertin, Moray Saint-Denis, Chambon-Musigny, and maybe Louis St. George, and you compare them side by side while reading books about what people have said historically about the wine. So for example, I can tell you all I want that the Geoffroy Chambertin is slightly flatter and it gets more sun in this village. Hence why their wine generally has more structure, is considered more manly and more masculine of the vintage. And then after that, you have the Moray Saint-Denis and Chambon-Musigny. These two villages are generally a little more elegant. And depending on your personal preference, people will like one over the other. I think most people thought the Moray Saint-Denis wine is a little more expressive. Again, it's closer to Geoffroy Chambertin. It's still a little more, has a little more sun exposure. Whereas in Chambon-Musigny, really kind of guess it's really hard to see, but there's a hill right here all alongside of Louis, Côte de Nuit. So there's a lot of their vine that is kind of hidden. It's cooler microclimates, so their wine generally has more of that floral cherry nose. It's very shy. It's not quite as big and open and black fruit as you would in Geoffroy Chambertin. And we're literally talking about like less than 5-minute drive from one place to another. But you wouldn't know it until you taste it yourself. So I think that's the beauty of it. So start there. And then after that, then you can get into the Premier Cru, compare them side by side. Grand Cru, if you really have the money to compare them side by side. Or being able to do the same vineyard. For example, you just take one Premier Cru or one Grand Cru vineyard, but find multiple producers that have the wine from the same vineyard and then compare it. That's a good way to see how the producers differ stylistically. I know, it sounds like almost too much work, but Burgundy is really for people who enjoy that seemingly endless combination of aroma, flavor, microclimate, and producer combination. It's not something you just go, I learned it, done. I know everything. So I'm still continuously learning whenever budget allows. So that's just, again, going a little more into what Burgundy is about. We're gonna continue going deeper and deeper as time goes on. But hopefully this gives you a little idea on why Burgundy is so complicated, and again, and sometimes such a huge price range between the cheap wine and the expensive wine. I hope you learned something new from this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested, please join my mailing list or my Facebook group. I have the link below. Thank you very much. Stay safe and drink responsibly and happily.